Very warm welcome to all the teachers here in this virtual meeting. It is indeed a great pleasure to have you all here. And I should actually, along with the welcome, I think it's better that I give you a vote of thanks at the outset itself, because you have chosen to be here in spite of our holidays. I know holidays, we just don't have holidays. We still keep going to school. We have invigilation and other duties. So in spite of your busy schedule, you have still decided to be here on this online platform to enhance certain specific teaching skills. In order we can help our children learn the language better, and because we are PGTs, we have to, our main focus is to help them do their best in the examination. So that is the basic thing that we are going to do here. So let me introduce myself. I am Mrs. Mary Emmanuel Arasi, the head shodi of DAV Girls Senior Secondary School in Gopalapuram, Chennai. I have around 19 years of CBSE teaching experience, and prior to that, 4 years of 4 years is TGT in a matriculation school. And I mean, those days we had a matriculation board. I moved on to DAV in 2006, and since then I've been associated with DAV. So it's definitely a proud moment for me to be the resource person for the 6th session of the online teacher training workshop organized by DAV Group of Schools to guide and mentor the PGTs of their associate schools. So on that note, I would like to begin today's session. I think you can see the topic. Yes. My system might be slightly slow. That's why I'm cross-checking. Can you see the topic for today's session?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the agenda for today. So as I had told you earlier, today's topic is note making and summary writing. It is a combination topic basically. It actually comprises both reading and advanced writing skills. And it is a part of the reading section in the question paper prescribed for class 11. I think you all would have definitely received the latest syllabus from CBSE for class 11 and 12. And we do have note making allotted for retained for class 11. So as I told you, it's a combination topic, though it appears in the reading section of the question paper prescribed for class 11. As displayed in the screen, the agenda for today, I'll be covering this topic extensively, starting from the introduction of this particular topic. We will move on to learning outcomes, teaching methodology. So these 3 steps will help you to plan your lesson plan effectively. We will then work together with a sample passage to understand the techniques in the skill and to fine-tune evaluation strategies too. Because as PGTs, it is very important that we evaluate the answer paper properly and we give a feedback to the children, because children have to learn from their mistakes. So I'm going to concentrate on that part too. So during the course of the session, in case if you have any queries, you can. I thought I would have a question answer session at the back end of the workshop, but given that we are only 4 or 5 participants, in case if you want me to stop anywhere, I will give you that liberty, or you can reserve your questions for a question answer session at the end of the workshop, right? So let's get on to today's main issue. So what is note making? Why should we learn or teach note making? So while reading, right, when we read extensively, we are often bombarded with a lot of information of a vast ambit, and it becomes very difficult to recall the main points or key points of a chapter or a passage or an article or a textbook. For a children, text definitely. Note making is an important study skill. So it helps to draw the main points, facts, information, details from a large chunk of text. And we organize it, we categorize it, and we recall information in a concise form. It is a means to capture the key ideas of a given passage in an easily readable, logically structured format. Thus, it helps to reduce a larger text into a precise form for better retention and comprehension. So this is why we are doing note making. and summary writing. The purpose of doing this skill. So let's come back. We should often remember whenever we are doing writing skills or whenever we are teaching prose, this happens to me. I just go beyond. I go overboard because we have that affinity towards the language, towards the subject. So we often go beyond. So there must always be a reminder for us. Ultimately, we are teaching a batch of students who have to face their board examination. This is a kind of thing, that a technique that I learned from DAV, what my predecessor happened to share with me. The main key point here is letting the children know what exactly are the parameters for evaluation. So many a time, a lot of teachers have asked me, right? So how is it DAV alone happens to score better, happens to get maximum marks? And when I ask them, what is your feedback? What do you give back in your answer papers? They used to say that they only correct it. But evaluation is the only or the ultimate communication between us and the student. So that if that is going to be fine-tuned, if that is going to be made effective, that's where our success lies. Our in the sense, mine and my children. So the mark allotment and the evaluation parameters for note making and summary writing. Remember, these two are sub questions. We have a question. Read the following passage and answer the questions below. And the first question is, based upon your reading, draft, make notes with the title, side headings, and subpoints. Use abbreviations, use symbols, right, and make notes. That is the first question. So the prescribed passage, the prescribed number of words for a note-making passage for this year is only between 200 to 250 words, not beyond that. I would like to quote the difference, how note-making becomes very effective because it is 200 to 250 words. It becomes very effective because way back in 2000 till 2014, we had note making done for a passage word limit between 700 to 900. So you can imagine how extensive passage was and how they had to concise it. But now this is like advanced writing. The passage itself is somewhere between 250 to 200 words. So imagine the kind of effective writing that the child has to do in this particular question pattern. So that we need to remember. The split up of marks for note-making question, title 1 mark, numbering and indentation is 1 mark, which we'll be doing in detail. Notes, for the notes you give 2 marks and key 1 mark. Whenever you do internal corrections, please remember, use your discretion, use your authority, and try to be very stern for internal corrections, say like midterm or revision paper and all. But when it is a terminal exam, like quarterly exam or a half-yearly exam or a pre-board exam, kindly do the evaluation along with these mark split. The child will know why he has lost 1 mark, why he has lost 2 marks. Child will know that because the title is wrong, he has lost 1 mark. Because he has not written the notes properly, he has lost half a mark or 1 mark or 1.5 marks. So when you give the parameter split up during the terminal end examination, it would be really helpful for the child to edit his mistakes and to avoid it in the future. When it comes down to summary writing, the content is for 2 marks and expression is for 1 mark. Content is basically it has to be done from the notes made, not from the literally from the passage itself. That is not to be done at all. So it has to be done from the notes made only. And if the summary is being written based upon the passage directly, then it cannot be evaluated. The summary has to be from the on his or her own only. Fine. Now moving on to learning outcomes. 1 minute. Yeah. Moving on to learning outcomes. We must remember that this is a life skill because students continue to use it for various purposes, right? So it is definitely a skill that they would be using it for their future too. That is the ultimate outcome of this skill. The task also makes the students to stay focused during during long lectures or classes, not only in school, but later even in college level also. So they get used to stay focused, because this skill helps them to reach out to the main points and to note them down and to draft their own notes. Another main thing is it enhances the learning ability of the child, because when they make quick notes, right, it becomes like a quick reckoner during revision. So not only as a writing skill, but for all their preparation, it would definitely be of huge help. So another most important skill that they learn from this particular writing task is it helps them to understand the major chunk of information given in that particular passage or text. And we could, as the PPT says, it assimilates all information. So when it assimilates, when it helps to comprehend, automatically it augments clarity too. For every topic that we teach children, be it prose or writing skills especially, right, always tell the children the benefits of learning language skills. Not only note making, any language skill that they learn in the classroom automatically becomes a life skill. This note making, if learned effectively, and if we are going to be proactive by learning, right, they would be definitely able to process information and stay attentive. That is what I've been telling in my previous points. So it helps them to prioritize the points, document what is important and what is not, identify unnecessary input and ignore them. And overall, it improves the organizational skills, and we could go on telling anything for that particular matter. So these are the learning outcomes of this particular skill. So what is a teaching methodology? How do we teach note making? So this is definitely something that we will have to do. Usually we cannot just end up giving a passage and start giving them pointers like 1, 2, 3, and 4 and just go on. It takes time. If you're going to ask me how many periods, here I think it must be the same with you all. We have a 40-minute period. Technically, it definitely takes 5 to 6 periods to fine tune the basics of note making. If you're going to spend 5 to 6 periods in making them practice, at least, I think 2 periods will go, 1 each for note making and 1 for summary. So the remaining 3 periods, you could practice 3 passages, 1 passage each period. And then when you move on to the next level, the child will be able to do on their own, because he or she is going to have the basic as a sample. So for me, what do I do is, the first priority for me is definitely passage selection. So the step 1 here that I personally do, which has helped me effectively all these years, is when I introduce class 11 to note making and summary writing, I choose interesting topics. I consider passage selection as the most important criteria for the reading section. Children can get easily distracted or might lose interest in doing their classwork or homework if the passages are not interesting. Hence, to get their attention, we must take time to select passages with variety. We have to select passages where students can relate more, fine, because when they relate more, they are definitely going to be engaged. Choose topics that gets their interest, probably mystery, science fiction, movie reviews. Why not? We could definitely take movie reviews. We could take trending topics like video gaming, shopping, vlogging, for example, is the latest trend. So you could get a script of a vlogger, and you could have that as your passage material, because these are something that gets them connected to what we work with. If you're going to give them a dull, boring passage, it doesn't help at all, right? So we could do with that, right? So we could select such interesting topics to get their attention, mainly because once the foundation is strong, then it becomes easy for us to carry on, right? So another added advantage that we have here is it helps us to connect with the children. We get to know the child. When the child is attentive, participation is more. So we're able to connect with them. Once you bring in 1 or 2 passages like this, you give the work to the children. Ask them to bring interesting passages, especially most of the additionals in the Hindu newspaper. They have lovely inputs that we could collect. Every additional paper that this particular newspaper publishes is a beautiful resource material by itself. So you could choose from from such editorials. You could choose articles from, you do have small, precise articles in the Hindu newspaper. I buy a Hindu newspaper, so I happen to know very well about that. I think the same must be with most of the other newspapers too. So you could bring in current topics which would get your attention basically. So this is the first step. So we could use all such passages, ask them to bring interesting news articles from newspapers, journals. They are very quick. They are tech savvy too. If you give them a vlogging material and you could ask them to convert and bring it as a script, definitely the children would definitely do it. So this is the first step, the base step, right? Choosing interesting topics, getting them to know what the passage is about. Forget about how to do note making at all. First, get their attention. That should be the main reason. The second step, as you see on the picture there, very clearly shows it's a self-explanatory picture, right? So the second step is entering into the zone of proximal development, ZPD, as it is basically called, right? So if you refer this particular theory, the theory is very extensive. The theory is very easy also. It's not a very difficult theory, but it is a beautiful, input that gives us hands-on practice. It helps and enhances a teacher's teaching skills, and especially in writing. So the first step, what we do, step one is to choose interesting topic. The next thing is entering into the next level, zone of proximal development. This is actually an area with a bit of difficulty, but I would definitely say it is a sweet spot of learning. So what is ZPD? It is the difference between what the student can do with guidance initially and what he or she can do without help as a next step. So the first step is achieved. So what about the second step? The second step that we are supposed to do here is bring in a kind of a second level to the passages. So we have brought them, we have introduced them to passages that they are already comfortable with. So we'll have to, when we keep supplying similar kind of passages, there is no opportunity for growth at all. The other extreme, if you're going to select a text that is far above their reading level, it will only end in frustration, disengagement, and probably incomplete homework. They would end up being a defaulter. So it takes a lot of time from a teacher to select passages for the first level and the second level. So the second level will be slightly serious topics where they also learn a lot of things, something that they have not heard about. It could be a news item, it could be a journal, it could be an extract from a literary book or something, a book that is probably on trend, or a movie that is being released. We could go to the next level. So step one and step two is achieved. The step three, the main agenda is a PGT. So what should we do? Introduce them to class 11 and 12 level passages. What do we mean by class 11 and 12 passages? CBSE has recommended different types of passages for note making. One, factual. Second is discursive. Third is literary, and fourth is argumentative, right? So you could choose any passages from a CBSE website, because they need to know the seriousness in answering this particular question. It is actually a student-friendly question. There is 100% chances to score an 8 on 8 in this particular section. So we must encourage the children to learn this particular skill, right, effectively, so that they would not lose even half a mark if learned properly and reproduced effectively on the paper. Fine. So much for the first part of. Just to sum up what I've been doing so far, I've just introduced what is note making to you, what are the learning outcomes, and then I have just introduced you, shared my experience, how I have been effectively doing, and what is my secret formula here is step one, choosing interesting topics, then entering into zone of proximal development, and finally the third step is to enter into class 11 and 12 level. By the time we get on to the third step, children will exactly know what should they do, how should they read the passage, how should they identify the title, how should they do the side headings, how should they write the subpoints. Everything they will know before reaching to the actual writing material. Can I move on? Do I have any questions or queries?
Yes, sir. No, ma'am. No queries.
Is it very fast? Is the pace fine?
It's so clear,
No, ma'am,
ma'am.
it's fine.
Sorry, sir.
It's clear, ma'am. It's fine.
Okay, fine. Thank you, sir. So we will move on to the next slide. So guidelines for reading the passage to make notes. So this is the actual active, teaching part of it, right? So when you give them the passage, when they get the passage, please tell them the difference between a note-making question and a reading comprehension question. The child has the first two questions as a reading comprehension question. You have factual analytical passages as question number 1 and question number 2. But note making is a reading come writing type of question. So you cannot do note making like a reading comprehension passage. The speed is a very important point. We have right now, we have 3 hours, right? The paper pattern is changed for the next academic year. We do have 3 hours, but in 3 hours, they have to write the entire paper. So fine tune the time management skills for your children. They need to know what time they should take. So note making, I have seen initially when children sit down for class 11 during the first midterm test, they'll end up doing note making for 45 minutes and 50 minutes too. Lack of practice, because I always tell my girls, right? I tell them writing is like a math paper. You cannot come to write an English exam without practicing writing skills. It's like math exam. You need to know what to write. You cannot flip the pages and come for an exam. So we need to fine tune them, tell them what are the effective time management skills too. So the first step that we have to do here is they have to have a bird's eye view reading. So because that is very important, that speed is very ideal for their time management. So a quick reading is a must. So what does this quick reading lead to? The quick reading leads us to ask two questions. The first question, what is the writer talking about? So, for example, if the passage is about blood donation, when we give a quick reading, what happens? Quick reading tells us that the passage is about blood donation. Perfectly fine. But what is the central idea of the passage? What is the writer is actually trying to tell us? So when we ask that question, probably we will be able to find the difference. Difference like, is the author talking about blood donation in general? Or is he encouraging people to donate blood? Or is he creating awareness on this noble need? So do you realize that the main agenda of what the writer is talking about blood donation itself varies? Now that is what we are going to arrive at. So the first step, the quick reading helps the children to identify the title. The title has to be precise and or apt. In the key clearly says in the board exam, the key clearly says that 1 mark is to be allotted for an apt title only. So children cannot blindly write blood donation. If it is blood donation, I'm not talking about board exam evaluation as such. I'm talking about how we fine tune their writing skills during the course of the year. If it is blood donation and if the author is actually talking about how to create awareness on blood donation, then the title blood donation is actually wrong. So a precise title is mandatory. So we need to make the child to understand that a precise and apt title is the first step towards the success of making notes effectively. So a quick reading definitely helps us to decide the apt title for the note-making answer. For that, you get 1 mark for the appropriate title. 1 minute. Okay. So I want you to refer the reading material that I have forwarded in the group. Can you please open that reading material? May I have some response if it is done?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So if you please take the first passage alone. This is exactly an activity that I thought I will have just to fine tune so that we will not have any other issues when it comes to teaching them. So you see the first passage. So I would want you to give a quick reading, like how would you expect your children to do it? Just give a quick reading. And if possible, you need not voice out, you need not chat, right? So right now, you just identify what could be the ideal. It's a very, very simple passage. Just because we are all our teachers, I have not taken any serious passage at all. This is mainly to communicate what we have learned during the course of year. So please feel free. I'll just pause for some time. I'll get back to you. Done. So you see the suggestions I've given for the title. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So I just want you to probably identify what could be the ideal title for this particular passage. If you could voice out, it would be nice now. I've given you the other side of the slide. It very clearly tells what we should not do.
Shall I try?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Save water.
Water. Then any other
Importance of water, ma'am.
importance of water? Then
Or else we can have water conservation.
water conservation. Yes, it's not there, but we could consider it.
Water and its uses, ma'am.
Water and its uses. Fine. Yes. So thank you for your participation. If you actually see, F and G are very ideal. Apart from water conservation, even that is an ideal title. Now, why am I not selecting the other reasons? Because the option C, water, cannot be a title because single words are not accepted as titles, not only for note making, even for report writing, article writing, right? Even as a caption for notice, we do not encourage single words as title. So please remember this rule, right? So we cannot have single words. Second, why not B and H? Because they have a question mark. Titles cannot be in questions. So we just rule out those two too. If you're going to take benefits of water, if you're going to say water and its uses, and G, importance of water, they are definitely somewhat related, but I can use my discretion. I can say benefits of water. Probably I can avoid. Allot half a mark to that particular title because the passage is actually not talking only about benefits of water. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we cannot. So we have to make children identify what is an apt title. So like I gave you an example for blood donation. So the entire passage, if you see, has got different viewpoints. And ultimately, as someone said, I did not have that particular topic intentionally, right? So water conservation. So actually, it summarizes the entire idea of the passage. So that is what we'll have to train children. So an apt title fetches 1 full mark for the child. So single words cannot be accepted as titles. Title. Questions cannot be accepted. And the most important point which children forget in note making, when they finish learning the entire task, they use short forms, they use numericals, they use abbreviations in the title. That cannot be encouraged. So if you have such short forms or numericals or abbreviations, and if they have questions or if they have single words, not all can be accepted. Can I move on to the next one? May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So we will move on to the side headings. Fine. So to do this, to identify the side heading, there is always a trick. It's a trick that we would have done in our, as students, we would have done that too. So any passage for that matter, the first and the last line of the passage has to be connected. That is the main grammarian rule for dividing passages, isn't it? So when we can ask the children to read the first line and the last line of the passage, you could try that with all the 3 passages that I've given you, or any excerpt that you pick up, it will always have. If it doesn't have, that is what I told initially, we need to identify passages suitable for note making. We cannot just select any random passage and ask the child to do note making. That is difficult from the exam point of view. So we need to be very prudent in selecting passages that can be done as note making passages. So ask the child. So the step 1 is ask the child to read the passage quickly. So what happens is that leads to identify the title. Step 2, read the passage again, but this time read it paragraph wise. When they read it paragraph wise, a rule in note making is they cannot jump from one point to another point. They can't do the first passage, go to the they can't do the first paragraph and go to the last paragraph. Then they can't come back to the second paragraph, or they can jump to the third paragraph. It has to be done in a particular order. Whatever is the passage given, the note making has to be done in a particular order only. So when they read the passage the second time, it is better to make them see, these are the initial steps, baby steps. Slowly each and every child would definitely find its own secret formula to do note making effectively. That is definitely to happen. So ask them to read the passage again, but skim it paragraph wise. So this helps them to identify the main points or side headings in the passage. So what we can do is, once the main points are identified, the rules that we applied for the title is also applicable here. So no short forms, no questions, right? No sentences. Side headings cannot be in sentences also. So that we must remember. So in their first, let them do a rough work. Let them not directly go for a fair work. So first step is to identify the title. Second step is to identify the side headings. Because the board has prescribed 200 to 250 words, it would be ideal to have 3 side headings at least. If the child writes 4 or 5 side headings, probably if you find it very lengthy, you could make a comment telling that the notes are lengthy, but we are not going to reduce marks for that. So technically it is not right from our part too. So if the child, you tell them for 200 words, 3 side headings, 250 words, minimum is 3 side headings. But the child can go up to 5 side headings, but again, time constraints. So I would always ask the child to keep it with 3 side headings, probably minimum 3 subpoints and 5 subpoints. Ask them to categorize like that so that they can save time for the 3-hour paper. So that is what I would like to share. And the next slide clearly shows you what could be the first side heading for passage 1, paragraph 1. Can you identify it? Please refer passage 1 and read paragraph 1. Let's identify what could be the ideal side heading for the first one.
Is that E, ma'am? Water, a necessity for survival?
Accepted, ma'am. It's not only one. You could choose. E, it's accepted.
E also.
But I will tell you why. Sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Someone.
E, water is an essential component for survival.
Water is an essential. That is A, isn't it? What you're telling. Okay, fine. Any other option? Or should I rather change my question? So what listed in the slide would not be ideal for the first side heading. Will not be ideal for the first side heading.
D, ma'am.
D. Okay.
Do
because-
all life forms.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why, ma'am?
C.
Why is it so? Because it has a question.
Question.
Yeah.
Yes.
C, yes, definitely. we
C
cannot
also. C also.
because it is a single word, so we
Single word.
cannot have that. Then one more.
A,
A.
ma'am.
Yeah, A, because it is in a sentence. Water is an essential component
Yes.
for survival. So A we cannot have because it
It's
is
a complete sentence.
So note making, the most important point is nothing can be in a sentence. Whether it is a side heading or subpoint, we can never have it to be in a sentence. So I hope now you would have understood. So component for survival accepted. Why is component for survival accepted? Because our title very clearly tells. What is the title? Definitely there is something involved with water. So we relate the title to the side heading. So we know what is the title talking about. So when we say component for survival, it makes sense. That relativity should also we should also teach them. The child should know, right? The child should know that this is what we are expecting from the side headings. Is it clear? Should I any doubts with respect to title and side headings?
No, ma'am. It's clear, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on. So this is all the 4 side headings, I suppose. Yeah, this is the second identify a suitable side heading for paragraph. We could go on, right? So that is what this particular slide very clearly says save water. See, I didn't want to go with the same title. I just wanted to know we could accept the creativity of the child. What the child tries to interpret could be, we could do it in 2 or 3 ways. The child, if you have a 40 in a classroom, we could have 40 different answers too. So probably the child could say save water. The first paragraph, a necessity for survival. Second, water and its uses. 3, need to conserve water, measures to save water. So we could have 4 different side headings. Like I told you, let's not restrict the child to stick only to 3 side headings. Allow the child initially, right? Allow the child. By the time the child comes to 12th standard, the child will know where it has to stay effective, where the child has to maintain his or her time management skills and techniques. The child would know. Initially, give the liberty to the child. Let's not restrict and tell him or her, this is enough for you to learn. This is enough for you to write. Let's not restrict that part at all, teachers. So we could give them the liberty. Let them write. Let them probably do 6 or 7 note-making passages. And then you tell them what would be ideal. So fine-tuning can be done later, even after the 8th or the 9th passage, fine-tuning can be done. So these are the 4 side headings for passage number 1. Can I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So the next thing is subpoints and sub-subpoints. For every side heading, we need to have subpoint. For every subpoint, we can have sub-subpoints. Sub-subpoints are basically optional. Okay, so we should definitely remember certain things while we teach them to write subpoints. So subpoints cannot be written in complete sentences. So we need to tell children to avoid verbs, articles, pronouns, subject wherever applicable. A minimum of 3 subpoints is a must for every side heading. Insist on that. Sometimes when the paragraph is very short, the child might end up writing 2 points. So there we cannot expect the child to say, no, you have to write 3 subpoints. No, let's use our discretion. The child is able to understand that. We need to appreciate the child's learning view also. So a minimum of 3 subpoints is definitely mandatory, that we can use our discretion. I ask the child to follow the logical sequence of the paragraph as given in the passage. Do not interchange the order of the paragraph. Consecutive paragraph, suppose, right, para 2 and para 3, they talk about the same idea. Yes, that they can be clubbed together. It is not mandate to have, suppose there are, for 250 words, you have 6 or 7 paragraphs there. It doesn't mean that the child should write 6 or 7 side headings. So leave the discretion to the child. You have told him or her that minimum 3 side headings is enough. If the child goes up to 5, it is fine. The child goes beyond that, make a note, it is lengthy, and you can strike off and say what could be avoided or what could be clubbed. Fine. So while drafting the subpoints, as I told you, statistical, numerical analysis, proverbs, codes, examples, anecdotes, illustrations must be avoided. Only facts and information are to be incorporated. Suppose there is an example, suppose there is a numerical data, statistical data, reference given, an analysis being given. Ignore all that. You cannot have all those data that, see, basically these are the inputs that the author gives us to understand the topic in an even better way. There is absolutely no need for us to go with that kind of information in our note making. A note making, as I shared the slide in one of the first few slides, is a specific writing skill where the target is on the important points only. So definitely statistical, all numerical data, proverbs, quotes from different people, right? Anecdotal records, I reiterate again, need not be included in note making. Only the main ideas are to be written, especially in broken expression, right? So they cannot be, you can use hyphens in between, you can have phrasal expressions there, right? So the child can definitely do it in this way, but the entire subpoints cannot be in single words. However, subpoints can be in single words because the child wants to list down something. Probably the child can go with a subpoint, but definitely discourage the child if he or she develops the habit of writing the subpoints in single words, because that does not constitute to our understanding. So you have to remember that one. May I continue? So I've given you, I'm showing you a sample. Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I've
ma'am.
given Save Water, that is a title, and number 1, this is numbering. And can you see the indentation? Number 1, this has to be inside the margin, not outside the margin. Outside the margin, only the question numbers are to be written, right? Initially, when we have internal exams, and if the child happens to put the numbers outside the margin, please cut off and reduce 1 mark. Kindly reduce 1 mark. Let the child know the difference, that numbering is a part of the answer. It is not the question numbers. So the numbering has to be done inside the margin. So number 1, my first side reading is necessity for survival. So 1.1, water hyphen necessity. 1.2, existence. Without it, it is impossible without water. So we understand that existence is impossible without water. The third point, all living forms require water. For what do we require water? For consumption and daily activities. So see that sequential numbering, 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. And then under 1.3, we have 1.3.1, 1.3.2. If you're going to ask me, ma'am, this is the only kind of numbering that we're supposed to do? No. The child can have his or her own sequential numbering. The child chooses to do in Roman numbers, yes. The child chooses to do with alphabets, yes. Please teach them those nuances. As long as the child has a particular format in sequencing the points, yes, we can allow the child to do that. That is the main idea. That is the main learning that the child understands. So when the child says 1 and then writes as A or B, the child has clearly understood the concept. The child has understood that this particular subpoint is under the side heading. So that clarity the child definitely has. So we could definitely appreciate in that way it is going to do, right? So indentation is important, numbering is important. So when we start the first side heading, when we tell the child to write the subpoints and subpoints, along with that, let us introduce the numbering and indentation techniques also. So this is what I have for the second side heading, water and its uses. So non-potable water is used for washing, cooking and cleaning, agriculture, farming, harvest and irrigation. I have intentionally stopped with 2 points here for us to understand that it actually makes sense. So we cannot reduce mark telling that you have put only two points here. So I will reduce half a mark. Not. See, when you see on the whole, how many points is a child written? That is our discretion. We need not tell everything to the child here. So we could probably use our discretion. The child has made sense with the first one and with the second one. It's more than enough. So we have the third one, water conservation. So we have 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. Under 3.3, there are different measures mentioned in the passages. So we have the three measures under 3.3. Any queries related to this particular slide?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yes. So moving on, this is the sample slide from the Google, because nowadays we have to do this cross-checking also. The child might be listening in class, but however, whatever said and done and how much ever effort we take, the child, it's a growing phase. The child would always want to explore. So this is a Google slide. So you can see there, number 1, side heading A, number 2, side heading B, number 3, side heading C. And here they have used A, B, C and subheading, and you can see the small Roman numbers. Even though it is not sequential numbering like the one I had given you. The slide actually shows sequential numbering. But we cannot deprive the child if the child does not know to put that sequential numbering. But if the child is able to make the evaluator understand that he or she knows the differences, he or she is able to identify what is the side heading, what is the subpoints, even such kind of numbering, we could definitely accept. But this is something that the child can learn on his or her own. So initially, we have, as teachers, as trainers, we have to emphasize on we have to emphasize on sequential numbering. But if the child comes out with such expressions, please allow them. Let them be appreciated, because this is also another way. In their own simple way, they have very clearly stated what is a sequence, what is a kind of sequence that they have understood. It actually displays their understanding very well. So we could go with that too. Yeah. So now we move on to the key while they are writing. So I would like to go back to this one. So you see necessity, right? Without, REQ, require, right? So we come, I would have been, I think as teachers, we would have definitely taught. What does the CBSE say about the key? The CBSE very clearly states only universally accepted short forms and abbreviations are to be used. But with my experience as an examiner and assistant head examiner, the board actually allows the teacher, allows the board evaluator to consider short forms in their own sweet way. If the child has used his or her short forms in our own way, and if you are able, as an evaluator, you are able to understand what the child has written, or if the child is given a key to her personal expressions, yes, we can definitely award marks. We need not reduce marks stating this as a reason. I repeat again, if the child, even though CBSE says universally accepted short forms and symbols, which we are going to insist when we are teaching them the skill. Let us tell them how abbreviations can be formed, what are abbreviations, how can acronyms be formed, what are short forms, what are contractions. We could tell them. We could teach them as we are doing it. Like I have done contractions, washing, cleaning, all words with suffixes can be contracted, right? So they could do that. So rainwater harvesting, RWH, we know. Suppose there is some kind of society mentioned. For example, the Philatelic Society of India. So we probably, it is mentioned there in the passage. So you could tell the child to form a short form for that. So Philatelic Society of India, PSI. The child could use that, make her own short form and use that. All right. So he or she should supply that in the key. So such kind of personal short forms and key must be supplied in the key for understanding. Or if we are able to understand what the child has written, yes, we should award marks for that matter. So moving on to this slide, sorry. So universally accepted short forms and abbreviations allowed, but if it, as I told you, the child seems to be very clear in making us understand what he or she is written, please give the credit to the child. Contractions can be made for all words with suffixes, mathematical symbols, numbers can be used. When I say numbers can be used, numericals can be used to represent numbers. You get it? We cannot say 2 for TO or TOO. That is wrong. We cannot encourage children to write in that style. We cannot use number 4 for FOR. So that kind of restrictions, language restrictions, please teach them. There we'll have to be very firm in not awarding marks for such kind of short forms. Acronyms can be made minimum. No, that's another thing. Initially, when we teach children, they will end up writing 15, 20 short forms in the key box, not required actually. The board wants somewhere between 4 and 6 only. So that would raise a question, ma'am, I have written 10 short forms, I have written 20 short forms. Whatever is ideal, if they mention it, is more than enough. So a minimum of 4, maximum of 6. Please do not encourage them to write more than that. So they need not avoid keys for words for short forms like and, arrow mark and all those things. Let them not. Whatever is comprehensible to the evaluator, they could avoid it in the key. Whatever is they use on their own, they could probably provide in the key. So please do not allow them to entertain all the short forms, whatever they have written in the key. So I've given you a sample of the key. Insist the key to be within a box. These are presentation techniques. If you're going to ask me, ma'am, do we reduce marks if the key is not put in a box? Yes, in an internal exam, we want the child to be to learn presentation skills. We could probably make a note on it and pass it as a comment. But in the board exam, we do not look at all these things. Okay, this could probably be our own secrets. We need not reveal it, but insist the point that the note making has to be done in a neat manner. Ask them to avoid scribbling, scratching, unnecessary things they need not do. So that's the sample for keys. Sorry. Yeah. So this is something that the Google page is giving. Now this is very important. If you see because leads on to produces causes make sense. No, not incorrect. Again, the X makes sense. Definitely not disprove. Yes, it makes sense. Uncertain, possibly unproven. Again, these are different ways of taking it. Yes, we can accept it. But the 2 tick marks does not equal. It's not the same as. I don't think it makes sense, isn't it? So sometimes the Google might not be the ideal information provider. But as I've told you earlier, children do refer to all these things. We have a hashtag there. So nowadays the hashtag is used with a different interpretation. So special, the asterisk makes it like that first. So there are not all short forms could be acceptable. So please train them to know the difference. What is comprehensible? So I always tell my children, universally accepted symbols are not only what is allowed. Basically, universally accepted symbols are one that allows your evaluator to understand what note making you have done. So that is the main purpose of writing the symbols or using short forms or acronyms in our note making passages. Any queries related to the key?
No, ma'am.
So now we move on to the second question. A note-making question always has got 2 sub-questions. The first one is what we looked into. The second one is summary writing. The word limit is 50 words. It has to be done in a single paragraph only, right? They have to definitely make notes, right? So they have to definitely avoid sentences. I'm sorry. Single paragraph only. They will have to write the summary based on the notes, not from the passage. Children always initially, right, for the first 2 or 3 exams, till they identify the mistake that they have done, if you encourage them in the first 1 or 2 exams, They would continue that for the rest of the year. So if you find that they have lifted from the passage directly, please try. For all internal exams, I think we have the authority. Please try it out. It need not, it need the child, let the child know that we know. See, when we are the paper setter, when we know that when we should definitely know the question paper very well. So let us read the passage. When we go for board exam evaluation also, the HE makes it a point that the evaluators are aware of the passage. The passage is actually read aloud. So the evaluator knows what is the content given in the passage. So it is mandatory that we are aware of the content, and if the child happens to pick up, lift from the passage, definitely marks should not be awarded. If the child has been, this particular act has been ignored in the board exam, it is a child's luck. But as an English teacher, we cannot award marks for something that the child is not supposed to do. So please be very firm here, because this is actually a very easy one. So let them sit and write. So how do they write the summary? Ask them to elaborate from their side headings and their subpoints. That is all. So suppose they have 3 side headings. Each side heading could be elaborated into a sentence or 2. That makes it 10 to 15 words, right? Or 15 words per sentence per side heading. If they're going to take that, leads us to a 50 word summary. So that's how they'll have to be trained. So let them elaborate on the side headings, extend the side headings and the subpoints that they have put in phrases into running sentences, connect it, right? So summary is very important, right? So first line has to connect to the second line. So please teach them the connectors. Please remind them the sentence connectors, remind them how to use words like consequently, or the author shared, or give them hints for such expressions so that they could write the summary very effectively. So I've given you a sample for summary here. I hope you can read it. So I have a quick reckoner slide. So just for the note making. So the title has to be precise. You cannot have single word or question marks. Side headings need to be very crisp, no short forms, etc. And symbol or question mark cannot be used. Minimum 3 side headings. Under each side heading, you can have 2 or 3 subpoints. Right? Subpoints are optional. Sentences are not allowed. Usage of first person not allowed while making notes. Right. So while indenting, they will have to remember the space structure. So numbering and indentation is also an important part. So they should know, like we ask them, because probably telling them the usage of the purpose of a tab key, then they would understand what indentation is. So tab key lets out to, because spacing is very important when we make notes, right? So teach them the importance of spacing, indenting. The indent space is the importance of indenting. Then moving on to sequential numbering. Give them the liberty. You can ask them to come to try new techniques, new numbering styles with every homework passage. You could do that. Then goes to the actual presentation. So this is something that they do it as their rough work. So when they do a quick reading, they identify the title. When they skim every particular paragraph, they identify the main points. Under each main point, they're going to write 2 or 3 subpoints. If required, they will write subpoints. So teach them one after the other. Let them remember that they cannot write in sentences. Once this is achieved, please remind them, or when you're teaching itself, or when you're revising also, you could give them a reminder. Ask them to use a variety of techniques, right? When they use short forms and all, ask them to use a variety of it. They could probably teach them to use a variety of symbols. Probably they could use numericals, they could use mathematical formulas, they could use short forms, they could use abbreviations, they could use acronyms. So ask them to use a variety. So probably they're using an and symbol, you're using a contraction, you're using a mathematical, like an arrow mark, right? So it leads to, or a mathematical symbol or numbering. So this adds on to a variety of keys being used. So let the child be exposed. Usually they have this idea. we always stick to contractions because that is something new to them, reducing the word and bringing the word to a short form. Too much of reduction will not help in understanding what the child has written. So while teaching, insist on that too many contractions or making a contraction with every word is not actually note making. The child has to understand that. The ideal words that could be contracted are words with suffixes. That is the ideal thing we can do. But reducing every other word, will we be able to read? Will it make sense to us? We can never correct, isn't it? So when the line does not give clarity, put an into mark. Right, lacks clarity, lengthy, avoid examples, avoid statistical data. So wherever the child is making a mistake, please make it a point to give a feedback. If we take efforts in giving proper feedback on the answer paper for the first 3 or 4 exams, I can assure you that our evaluation becomes very comfortable from the second term onwards, because the child will know where exactly he or she is making a regular mistake. So help the child to identify. Simply scoring a 3 on 5 or a 4 on 5 or a 1.5 on 5 is definitely not acceptable. While you are evaluating, evaluate for the 5 markers separately and 3 markers separately. Please do not combine marks and put 6.5, 7, 4.5. That is not the system. The CBSE always recommends all mark allotment, division of mark allotment on the right side of the answer sheet. So if you're making any comments, if you're giving the split up of marks, suppose you feel that the title is not apt, you want to give only half a mark to it, write half plus. So 1 mark for indentation. Numbering and indentation. If you feel that the child is not spaced properly, but the child is done numbering, give half plus half, which means half is for the deviated title and half is for the numbering, because indentation is not there. The child will know next time when he is writing an exam, he will remember that he has to indent properly to get that half a mark. Next comes your notes. Wherever the child is written in a sentence, underline and put an into on that sentence. Let the child understand that it is because of writing in sentence, the child has lost his or her mark. Then if the child has written in short sentences also, it has to be identified. The next thing is clarity. For notes, the 2 marks, what are the parameters that we have to check? Sentence is not the only parameter that we check. The clarity, when the side heading is written and the subpoints are written, does it have clarity? Is it coherent? Is it related to the given passage? Are the points there in passage? Many a time, probably suppose they know about water conservation, they will write whatever is not there in the passage also. So then you will have to say irrelevant content. Then you will have to say lacks fluency, because the child has happened to interchange the paragraphs in the particular passage. Then you will have to say lacks coherency, it lacks fluency. Follow the order of the passage. Please give such feedback in your evaluation. Such feedbacks can only help the child to score every time he attempts an exam, he'll be able to score better and better from the previous time. So much for the note making 2 marks. The last one is the key. The key has to be written. Please train your children to write the key after the notes, not after the summary. Because in the board examination, after the board examination, when we go for evaluation, a teacher, I'm not supporting the teaching community. Yes, when we are evaluating, we are definitely accountable for the kind of work that we do. But when a teacher is made to, when we are supposed to do 30 or 35 papers a day, the teacher, we develop a mentality, note making, key summary, note making, key summary. Suppose the teacher is not able to notice the key that is written after the summary, because we fine tune to those things, isn't it? It is our mistake. I would definitely say it is our mistake if you're not going to be observant while doing our evaluation. In a school test or in a terminal exam in a school, if we are ignoring, if we give a 0, telling that the key is not, the child can bring the paper and the child can tell, ma'am, I've written the key here. So probably you could tell him why you didn't write it after the notes and you could correct it. But in the board exam, if the evaluator happens to ignore, thinking that the child is not written the key, the child loses 1 mark. So during the internal examination, insist the child, encourage the child to write the key only after the notes. Let them not have the habit of writing wherever they want. Please do not entertain the child to divide the answer in different parts of the answer paper. Train the child to write the entire question under in the same way. So note making, key and summary. So that should be the order. Insist the child to write it in that particular order, not randomly in some part of the paper after the last page. The key is on the last page. Please don't entertain the child. This is one way we will have to be very firm to encourage the child to know, to learn their presentation skills. So put a firm hand there. Do not allow such cases at all. If the child has, if you allot or award marks there, the child develops that particular habit. So I think we as mentors, teachers, we are their second mothers. So we need to be very firm in doing that particular job. So this is what I would actually suggest as evaluation tips for note making. When it comes to summary, content and expression is what we have. Content and summary is what we have. As I had told you earlier, content, you definitely need to see whether the notes is made up, sorry, the summary is made up of only from the notes written and not in general. That is what we need to see. 1 minute. Yeah. That is what we need to see. Fine. So moving on to the expression part of it, if the child, sometimes the child ends up in writing present tense during the course of our internal exam. The summary is always written in past tense. So please give a reminder and encourage your children to use past tense as much as possible. But if the child is written in present tense, probably what we can do as evaluators is the actual part, the truth is we can reduce only half a mark. We cannot reduce marks in both the parameters for the same mistake. Get it? We cannot reduce mark in content also and in expression also. Marks can be reduced only under a particular parameter. The child has made spelling errors. Even if the child makes 2 errors or 20 errors, the maximum mark we can reduce is only half in expression. Please remember that. This is for terminal end examination. While we do our internal corrections, yes, we can take our liberty because we being firm with them is only to help them learn better. So during your internal exam, initial revision exams or class tests, be very firm in that. But what I'm talking about evaluation here is a final board exam for the annual exam for class 11. What should we do? Yes, we cannot reduce marks in the content part of it if the child has made a lot of spelling errors. Yes, as English teachers, it is definitely, we would be really irritated to find a lot of errors and still award 2 on 3. But that is what the board says. It is basically a foreign language. So whatever we have tried, and if the child happens to learn from it, give the credit accordingly. Let the child know that as long as the content is there, at least 75% of the marks is what the child gets. So for the content that he or she has put up, he or she definitely deserves the mark. So do not penalize the child in more than one place for the same mistake.